race, just born together, made for elevation. I'm a soldier, won't surrender. Faith is like a fire that never burns to embers. The voice of the unheard. Love is the answer.
I gotta speak it, believe it, that's how I feel inside.
I can't sit here quiet.
You can take my heart, you can take my breath when you pry it from my cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Sleeping in the shadows could be making history. Through the fire, on the water, used to be a slave, but now you are a conqueror.
They can take my heart, they can take my breath when they pry it from my cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. Up, 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 up. We're rising up, 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 up. Rising up, 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 up. We're rising up, 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 up. Rising up, 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 up. We're rising up, 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 up. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance. You can't resist us. This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Straight Talk with Joe Villano. I am all glad you are here. We have a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting things going on out there in the political world, especially when it comes down to what people are spending and what they're actually starting to spend it on. Obviously, we're going to go through the U.S. Senate race. We're going to talk about, obviously, the state races. We're going to finish the wrap up on the debate today. And I'm going to answer some emails because a couple of really good emails came in on a specific topic that I want to make sure we touch on because most people probably don't realize what is involved in it. So we're going to get into that. And then, of course, as always, we're going to answer your questions for anyone who wants to call in. But let's get through formalities first. I am Joe Villano. I am your host, your guiding light through the craziness, through the mayhem, through all the BS that you hear coming around from everywhere. And it's obviously, we got what? We have 16 days to election day. So you're seeing probably commercial after commercial after commercial, radio ad after radio ad. It is just crazy. But I just think in 17 days, it all goes away. In 17 days, we could all have our lives back. Well, except for some of us who will dedicate even more of their life to public service. And I look forward to doing that so we could actually make some progress up there in Hartford. As always, if you want to call in, 203-679-9610. Listen, I know the Democrats are listening to this show. I want you to call in. I want you to call in. I want to have these discussions about what's going on. I want to know, I really, really, really want to know why you're voting Democrat this year, if you are, because I need to make sense out of it. I need to make some sense out of it on what you're thinking. Because again, I don't think Democrats, your Reagan and your Clinton Democrats, this is not their party anymore. And the problem is, I don't think they realize that yet. They don't pay attention to politics every single day. They don't realize that the Democratic Party has been hijacked by the far left, by the woke left. So it's, I hope you call in 203-679-9610. And of course, you can always email us, straighttalkjv@gmail.com. And I thank you for all the emails that come through. And of course, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and all those other in between, you can always jump on the message board, which I see is up and running. We want GN to call. I would love GN to call in. We could have a great discussion on all sorts of topics if she wanted to call in. We know the odds of that happening are slim to none. I think she's had enough of talking beside me for one lifetime, which I don't blame you. I won't want to talk next side of me either, especially when you have nothing to run on. So, of course, obviously, this show is always, even though it's not bought and paid for by us because we don't pay for this show at all, and we don't make any money off of this show. I do this strictly for the love of my city, state, and country, which is why I come here and I made this whole setup for you. So, obviously, this is obviously SEC makes me have to say this. That is paid for by the Volano for State Senate campaign and Josh Borkstra, the greatest treasurer. And of course, as always, since I am giving the message, I approve the message. So let's jump right on into it. So I've been watching what Democrats are doing. Because again, I love to just observe them in their natural habitats. So I do that. I watch MSNBC. I watch CNN just because, again, it's always nice to know who you're running against. And I'm noticing two things. Two things I'm noticing. One, Democrats are starting to spend a lot of money in states that they normally don't have to spend a lot of money in. One is here in Connecticut. Joanna Hayes. Now, again, she's in a tough race. Joanna Hayes is going to lose. If I have to call one, Joanna Hayes is going to lose this election. George Logan, I believe, will be our next congressman in the 5th district. The first one since Nancy Johnson. And, of course, Nancy Johnson got beat when they did redistricting. And they kind of boxed her out. The other one is Blumenthal. So there was a great article in the Connecticut Mirror. So if anyone doesn't know, the Connecticut Mirror is a left-leaning publication. And of course, again, I always read liberal stuff because I like to know what they're trying to do and where they're trying to come from. And Blumenthal ups Connecticut Senate race spending as Levy prepares for Trump fundraiser. Now, Levy had a fundraiser on the 18th down in Florida over at Mar-a-Lago. And from what I hear, it was a great success. Obviously, Donald Trump, he knows how to bring in money. So, listen, Blumenthal, if you see all the polls, it shows that Blumenthal is up by 13. We know that's not true. And it's not true for a couple of reasons. Now, is she winning? I don't think so. I think she's probably down 3 or 4 points. And that's where I believe. That's my gut feeling says she's down 3 or 4 points. Same thing with Stefanowski. I don't think Stefanowski is down by 12, 15 points. If you look at the Quinnipiac, 17 points. That's not happening. I think it's because of 2 reasons. One is the Trump effect. Nobody wants to admit that they're voting for a Republican, especially to a pollster. Now that's really happening. That's been happening ever since Donald Trump started running for president, because nobody wants to deal with the nonsense that goes along with it. And again, to me, I am very vocal about who I'm supporting, and I'm not afraid to say it. But there are a lot of people just don't like the confrontation. But to believe that Democrats are up 12 to again, if you look at Quinnipiac, 17 points, I think is ridiculous. I think that's naive. Now, I'm also not saying Republicans shouldn't be, busting their ass on their ground game. making sure they're getting out there and meeting with the people. We shouldn't take anything for granted. The other place I look is what the media is saying. And if you watch MSNBC, you watch CNN, you watch some of the local papers, you notice what they're if you notice there's a theme of what they're all trying to do right now. They're all saying, well, Republicans are trying to fix this election. Republicans are doing this. Republicans are doing that. They are preparing themselves to do the one thing that they are going after Donald Trump for doing. They're getting ready to say that the election was rigged. They're getting ready for when Republicans take over and that red wave comes through. And I tell you, if we all stick together and we all support one another and get that message out there, a red wave is quite possible here in the state of Connecticut and in this country overall. But we all have to be in together. And Democrats are preparing themselves for what they know is coming. And they're setting the stage to sit there and say, this is all rigged. It's voter suppression. That is what's coming, I guarantee it. They are going to do the same thing Hillary Clinton did. No Democrat, if you remember back in 2016, not a single Democrat would sit there and say that election was fair and honest. And then they went and criticized Donald Trump for saying the same thing. Listen, it happens every 4 years, every 2 years. The hypocrisy is just laughable. And when you're listening to these people on MSNBC and CNN and others, you just sit there and like, are you freaking kidding me? You just been bitching about this for freaking 2 years. But yet here they are. Because again, they know people have a short memory. But I'm telling you, Republicans need to keep their nose to the ground and move forward and keep getting that message out. It's resonating with the people. It's resonating. We just got to keep it up. So in state news, excuse me. In fact, I forgot to grab my water today. Damn it. I've been down here most of the day. And then honestly, I was door knocking, lit drops today. And then I got back about what? 4:30-ish. And then I had to take a nap. And I just took a nap and I just got up maybe like an hour ago. To be completely honest. I had the show all set up ahead of time and I had to go take a nap. So I forgot my water to bring down. So it happens. Some really interesting things that are going on in the state. And I always call for accountability because I think accountability and transparency are the keystone of a good government. It really is. If you could have those two things, if you could have transparency and accountability, I believe you're set up for a very good administration / government with the people supporting you. But I've always said it ever since this COVID, and we started spending all this, billions and trillions of dollars. I'm like, is anyone paying attention to where this money is going? I mean, really paying attention. So obviously, the state of Connecticut received over $4 billion worth of federal aid for COVID. And they were giving out a ton of money to these pharmaceutical companies. And the big one was for their insurance companies for test providers. So if you got a COVID test, it went through the insurance and insurance billed the state and everybody was supposed to be for free. So come to find out, because I've been looking at it and I always, from the day one, I'm like, are they tracking this? How much money are we actually spending on COVID testing in the state of Connecticut? And how much money are these insurance companies really making? And never got an answer until 2 days ago. Well, really, it was, well, the study was finished last week on the 19th, and that's when it posted up. So the state actually was finally transparent here. And the state Department of Public Health did not track whether testing providers who received millions of dollars in public funding, if they were getting that money plus insurance money. So these places were double dipping, making millions of dollars. And no one ever thought to maybe track it, to make sure that we were, as a country and as a state, overpaying these companies, these insurance companies, these healthcare providing facilities. And they said it was largely due to the Department of Public Health lax record keeping during the pandemic. That is your Connecticut government in a nutshell. They will track things when they want to go against you and they want to tear you a new one and try to squeeze every penny out of you. But then to all this other stuff, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Don't worry about it. Millions? Tens of millions out? Don't worry. Come on, don't worry about that stuff. It's not our money. We got that from the federal government. Don't worry about it. That's how they look after your money. The auditors noted that the state health officials did not run checks during the height of the pandemic to determine whether they were overpaying the various test providers whom they were relying to screen vulnerable nursing home patients. Anyone want to know how much money we gave? Anybody interested? On how much money we friggin' just threw away? $159 million. $159 million. We just threw away. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. $159 million, and that's just the 10 clinics, hospitals, and private laboratories. That's on average of what? $16 million each. God, I wish I was in the pharmaceutical business. I would have loved $15 million of unchecked money. Remember, 16 million, so 159 million. Like I said, averaged it out 16 million. That's on top of the money they were getting from insurance companies. They were getting money from the insurance companies too. Come on, man. They were rolling in dough. And the state of Connecticut couldn't be bothered. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're going to get that on the back end. They're going to get that on the back end. Don't worry. That's going to come in political contributions right there. It's absolute craziness. This is why big government does not work. You know, there was a question during the debate. Do you think that the private sector can do better than the government? And can the government be the provider and the overseer? No, they can't. The private sector always does a better job at getting things done. The government should always be the overseer. They should always be the overseer. That is their job. The government never should be doing any service because they do it inefficiently and there's no accountability. this money should have run through through a government department with very good record keeping, and then holding these different organizations accountable for how they spent it and making sure that they were not getting insurance funds, so they were not double dipping. But remember, a lot of these places are in the pockets of the Democrats and in the state legislature. You heard my opponent say it. I know how Hartford works. I can hit the ground running. I built these relationships. Sure you have. Because you're all in the pockets of one another. We know how corrupt Hartford is. We know the backroom deals that are going on. Yes, when she says that, believe her. Which is why she's a horrible choice to send to Hartford. It is absolutely crazy. So I thought that was quite interesting. I finally got an answer to that, and I've been asking for that. I've been trying to find out that number for at least a year. And there we go. We finally have it. So what's other things that have been thrown out our way here? Anyone see, again, everyone's making a big story out of this. And they don't realize how to take it. They just hear the numbers and they freak out. So Lamont finally he didn't let out the whole tax return. He just let out the cover pages. Because obviously he's not going to let you get into, who he's investing, who he's de-investing in, and all that kind of stuff. That's personal stuff. That's his own business, I guess. So he released his tax return and shows Lamont earned more than $54 million in 2022. Now, most people hear that and they go, well, how the hell did he do that being a governor that pays $150,000? And most people don't realize that rich people don't take salaries. And there's a couple of different types of income. There's earned income, which obviously he would get with $150,000. Then there's passive income. And then there's investment income. Passive income is the best income. Because that's just assets. So he made $54 million, and 95% of that was capital gains tax. So for those of you who don't know what capital gains tax is when you de-invest in a company and you sell your stocks or you sell your bonds and you take that money out of the system. So it doesn't get taxed on an income level. It gets taxed on a capital gains tax system. And that's where that money comes from. So really, what he's saying basically, what Lamont was trying to tell everybody, if you know economics or you know how the stock market works, what you're hearing is, I don't believe in this economy anymore. So I know it's not going to get any better anytime soon. So therefore, I need to take the money out. And I need to invest it in other places. Now, apparently, $54 million, he decided not to reinvest. Because if he was smart, he would have just taken out and moved it to something else. So it's not considered an income or a capital gains tax. But he decided to take it out. Because he understands we are heading for a recession. He's not a stupid man. His family is extremely wealthy. They didn't do that by doing stupid things. And they definitely don't do it based on trying to lose money. Remember, and this $54 million is only his money. He files separately from his wife, who is a venture capitalist, who has done very well. And everybody was up in arms when she invested in the companies, again, that were doing COVID stuff. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Whatever you were thinking just now, forget it. Take that back. There's nothing shady going on. They're not corrupt. No, they're not corrupt. No insider trading going here. My husband's the governor. The state's going to funnel all this money to all these different companies. And yet his wife decides to invest her group, her group of buddies who are in that capital group, decide to invest in that company. And what do you know? They get contracts with the state. You ever wonder why they now file separately? He can't show that. He can't show that. He knows he has to show his records. He definitely does not want to show hers. But again, no transparency, no accountability. Therefore, you don't have the support of the people. It's that simple. It's very, very crazy out there. And this man knows that this economy is heading for a recession. Inflation's at 8.2. You have interest rates going through the roof because the feds have to continue to increase it at least a half a point to 3/4 of a point every time they meet every month. And even the Federal Reserve has said we're going to be heading for a recession because they've already knocked it up almost 3 points and nothing has eased. Does anyone know why that is? Because we've put over $4 trillion. Really, if you think about it all together, $6 trillion into this economy. If anyone thinks that 5 or 6 months of interest rate hikes are gonna catch up to $6 trillion, it's not. You're looking at almost a year to a year and a half of interest rate hikes just to try to get that money back into that money back into the Treasury. Lamont knows this. People like myself know this, which is why you're not seeing inflation even budge. The only way right now to fight inflation is to cut taxes. That's it. Until you can work to get $6 trillion down to about 2 to 3, will you even see inflation budge? And the only way to do that is to jack up interest rates and provide tax cuts. Because right now, the families here in Connecticut and in this country cannot afford it. So for all you people who are for these $1,400 checks that you got, this is what you're paying for it. And I said that when they first decided to come out with them. I was like, are you trying to tell me you're spending $2 trillion at a shot and you're giving the American people $1,400? And people are excited about it. People were excited about it. People were like, oh, this is great. This is going to be the end all be all. It's like, what is $1,400 going to do for you? And I always said, you will pay for this at the end. You will pay for it, and you are. We're all paying for it right now. This is what happens when you give money out. This is why I was so against during debate. She said, oh, well, we're giving $1,000 to each child care provider. For what? To each what? $1,000 is going to do nothing. If you have oil in your house, that's like not even a tank full of oil. But people are excited about it. Like we should all be cheering on our rooftops. Go Lamont. No, this is just a way to buy votes. That's all. That's all this is. Because they know it's going to get much worse than what it is now. I've been saying it for months. I don't say it just to say it. I say it because there's proof of it. Remember, this is straight talk. We're going to be very straightforward with you. Here's what's coming. And everything we said that's happening, that was going to happen, is now happening. Everything we have predicted here is now happening. And it's not rocket science. I mean, it's nice to have an economic background, but it's not rocket science. Lamont knows what's coming. And if I was Stefanowski, I would pounce on that. Because listen, at the end of the day, even the most dishonest politician is not going to let their bank account drop. He's going to do the best thing for his financial future. And if you think that's watching his retirement accounts and his stocks tank, and you think he's going to take it on the chin, hell no, he's not going to do that. He'd rather lose this election than sit there and watch his stocks tank. Any Democrat would. Any Republican would. But he can't have it both ways. He can't sit there and say, we're moving in the right direction. We're not. We're not. He can't say we're moving in the right direction and then literally drop $54 million out of his stock accounts. We got to call bullshit. Because that's exactly what he's trying to feed you. Get your boots on. Because it's gonna get really thick in the next 16 days. So it's really crazy to me. But, of course, for me, one thing I've been pushing a lot is the fact that we have, I'm all for we were just talking about nonprofits and how nonprofits really should be the ones to, again, you want to fight homelessness, you want to fight hunger, you want to fight food shortages, you want to fight anything under the sun. You don't do it by using government. Government, again, should be the overseer. You should be using these private nonprofits, and you should be using churches. Because believe it or not, churches are the best and most efficient nonprofits out there. And we should be utilizing them for what they do best. But we don't. In fact, like I said, my opponent wants to tax our nonprofits. And we fought that tooth and nail when the tax assessor here in the city of Meriden decided she was going to strip everybody's nonprofit status. And of course, every nonprofit sued us. And I said it was coming. And luckily, most of them, 90% of them, got their tax exempt status back. And there were articles in the papers, how can they do this and that? And then when I called my opponent out on it, I went, wait a minute. And I played her own clip of her saying, I want to tax the nonprofits with large endowments. And I said, okay, well, that means the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, American Arc, Women's and Families, Easter Seals, Community Health Center, they're all going to get that because they all have large endowments. Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of America, Girl Scouts just received $2.4 million. In case no one saw this the other day, the Girl Scouts of Connecticut received $2.4 million from Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. My opponent wants to tax that. Now, instead of getting it to the girls and letting them do some great things in the community, which is what they do, she thinks that the government is better off using that money for what they believe is the best. Like I said, she's just another tax and spend liberal. And she wants to grab tax money from wherever she can get it. Because she wants to give it to her special interests. That's really what it's all about, is having control over the money. so they can distribute it the way they see fit. And I love during the debate, she said, no, I'm just talking about the private corporate nonprofits. That's not what you said. And then I played her clip of her saying exactly it. Nonprofits with large endowments. So if you live in the city of Meriden, Middletown, Middlefield, or Cheshire, and you use any of those nonprofits, any of those YMCAs and Boys and Girls Club to send your kids to summer camp, for sports camps, and all this kind of stuff, what do you think is going to happen when they start taxing them? When she starts taxing them, all those rates are going to go up. And services that they're able to provide to the inner cities, to those who most need them, are going to go away, or they're going to go way up. The costs are going to go way up. Is this the kind of people we need to send to Hartford right now? Or ever? We should never send them up there. But this is what we're facing. This is what we're up against. We are taxed enough in this state. Hell, we're overtaxed. Again, we have a $4.6 billion surplus up in Hartford, and they still won't give you any money back. If you're a special interest of theirs or you're a voting block of theirs, they're going to take care of you there. If you make enough noise, they'll take care of you there. I mean, look at childcare. They're each getting $1,000. That's why when she said, when the moderator asked, but it's going to United Way. I don't care who it's going to. That is not the role of the government. It's not. It's not their role to be picking and choosing winners and losers. Their job is to do the best on behalf of everybody. But they don't see it that way. They just want to know what their voting bloc needs so they can pander to them in an election year. And that's all that's happening. You're seeing what buying votes looks like right now. And most are praising it. Like my opponent, she praises it. She's like, oh, we need to do stuff for those. We should be looking at those for Stop and Shop and everybody else. Again, one thing you never hear is anything for our first responders. Nothing for the police officers or the firemen who are, again, out there every day busting their ass in our EMS. They ain't got nothing. They got nothing. And nor will they get anything. They'll just get more restrictions for them doing their job. And if anyone doesn't think that there's more stuff coming, it's crazy. Yeah, that's right. Just teachers, nurses, and daycare providers. Just interesting that two of those happen to be the professions that our opponent just happens to represent. Well, supposedly represents. Because if you're a nurse in the AFT, I don't know how you haven't thrown this woman out on her ass. Because she's supposedly supposed to represent you. You know, and like I said, during the debate, she talked about, how we have a shortage of nurses. They're working doubles and this and that. They're 12 hours and they have no one to cover, so they work another 4 hours. And my immediate response was, I can't believe she's saying this. I can't believe she's saying this because weren't you the one who was okay with them being fired for not being vaccinated? They were perfectly fine to work throughout the entire pandemic, unvaccinated. But then all of a sudden, when the governor said, no, you have to be vaccinated, and they're pushing this vaccine mandate, you let your own members of your own union be fired because they didn't want to have a vaccine. Whatever happened to my body, my choice? Apparently that doesn't go to nurses. Liberals love to throw that around. My body, my choice. But she let her own members be thrown out on their ass. And just to find out now they're like, oh, it's okay if you don't want to get the vaccine. It's okay, you go work there now. But damage already been done. They already been fired. And if that's how she represents her own members of the union that pay her, God help what she has in store for us. Because she'll throw us right under the bus for social justice. And she's already said it. And teachers, if there's a single teacher out there today watching this show, just know that your job is on the cutting block depending on which community you're in and what color you are. Because she said it. We need to have our school systems to look like our demographics in our community. Okay, well, what does that mean? And she calls it inclusion and diversity. What does that actually mean? See, again, liberals like to play on these words: accountability, diversity, inclusion. So basically, she's saying it's okay to do what Minneapolis is doing to their teachers. If you're a white teacher in Minneapolis, you are going to be laid off first before any minority because of the district you work in, so that we can make the administration look like the student population. Now, last time I checked, when you hire and fire people based on the color of their skin, that's discrimination and it's racist. They are telling you straight out in public without any hesitation that they are planning to use discriminatory and racist policies to do their bidding. If you were a teacher, I would be like, what are you talking about? And you're paying into this union? Forget about seniority. Seniority right out the window. And my real question is, okay, let's say in a perfect world, the administration looks like the community at which they serve. Let's just say in a perfect world, it's like that right now. Now, we all know we live in a dynamic world, especially if we work in the cities and live in the cities. So the average teacher career is what? 15 to 25 years? So let's say in 5 years, the demographics change. Then what do you do? Do you just fire the teachers and say, hey, we got to replace you with either white teachers or Hispanic teachers or African-American teachers? I mean, is this what we do? Is this where we're going to be looking? How do you implement something like this? It's absolute madness. It's absolute craziness that they even have the balls to say it. But they don't care, because if you question it, you're a racist. You don't want diversity. It's not even called affirmative action at that point, because they're already hired. They're already hired. All these teachers that are in the school system right now, if you're in the city of Meriden, which again has a large, and I think majority, white teachers, when we're only 25% of the population really here, are you trying to tell me these teachers are on the cutting block in the name of social justice? In the name of social justice and diversity and inclusion, you're on the cutting block. Again, if I'm a teacher and I hear that, I lose my mind. And you find it hard when you sit there and wonder why you can't find teachers. Huh. Very, very interesting. You wonder why, again, and that's not even on top of the culture that's in our schools now. And we talk about the disrespect the public gives to police officers. It's just as bad in our school system. And we've talked about this many times on the show. Our school districts are basically playing a numbers game. And they maneuver their policies based on what number they need to reach. And again, I think I said it last time. Right now, they're on a tardiness. Last year, tardiness was through the roof. So they said, "Oh, we got to get tardiness down." So now they rather you be absent from school than be tardy, because if you're tardy, they have to report that number to the state every month. Where if you're absent, you know what? The state's not looking at that number. So it's a shell game. It's all again just a play on numbers. They don't actually care about education. They care about making that number so the state stays off their ass. So the state still gives them money. They always need to have an issue, because when they have issues, it brings in more money. They can sit there and say, well, in order to fix this issue, we need to raise more money. We need to get more money. We need to get more money. You heard my opponent. We need to get more money into education, as if money solves the problem. Money doesn't solve this problem. It's the culture in our schools. That's the problem. Really, I think it's the culture of society. Where we were to where we are now, that's the problem. But that's a whole nother discussion altogether. But again, if she's going to treat the constituents of the 13th the way she treats and what she's allowed to happen to her own members that, again, pay her to do that job, no, thank you. No, thank you. You will be thrown right under the bus. And if you say anything, you're fighting progress. You're not trying for diversity or inclusion. You're a racist. Again, I've been called everything under the sun. I don't care. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. And the fact that she actually had the guts to say that tells me that they don't care what you think, what parents think, what teachers think, what the administration thinks. It's all what the social justice warriors think and what they want, because they're the ones that are pulling the strings now. So one thing that did come up during the debate, which some people really has been the one thing that I've gotten the most questions on and emails on. And a couple of people sent it, and they asked, what are PLAs? And why are they bad? Okay. So if you were not here in Meriden in 2015, then you probably didn't know what I was talking about during the debate. And I said, when I asked, is anybody familiar with Maloney High School project? And for those of you, I briefly described it during the debate. What basically happened is we had about a $280 million cap on the Maloney High School project. Don't quote me on the number. It may be off a little bit. And it went out to bid. And it came back, and we got all these great companies that put in these bids, and they all reached the 280. And then they picked one. And then Brian Daniels turned around and says, no. We need to have a PLA. Now, if anyone remembers the meetings leading up to that vote, Larry Kenzier, now again, these are not Republicans. These are all hardcore Democrats that I'm about to mention. Larry Kenzier, who was the city manager at the time. Wilma Petro, who was the purchasing manager for the city of Meriden. Matty Dominello, who was the majority leader at the time. Steve Iovana. Of course, what does he know? He's only an architect. And they all stood up and said, do not sign a PLA because it drastically raises the price of the project. Now, remember, we couldn't change the price of the project. The project is what it is. You couldn't get over that cap. So there was nothing we were going to do. We were always going to stay at that $280 million mark. So it went back out to bid, and it comes back at $298 million or so. It came out $18 million higher. So of course everyone's like, what the frig? What just happened here? How are we going to do this? So they decided that, well, we can't go over the cap. So we're going to take $18 million, bring it over to the labor side, and we're going to take $18 million from the quality of service. So basically, you were about to use quality products. Now you're going to use less inferior products. So, like I always said, we paid for a Ferrari, and we got a Pinto, which is exactly what happened. And again, it wasn't just Republicans who were up in arms about it. It was a lot of Democrats. And like I said, and I'm going to read this because it's just funny that 2 days after the debate, this popped up in my memories because I put a whole article out on it. It was huge for me during my campaign against Brian Daniels in 2015. And it says, Larry Kendzior in purchasing Wilma Petro strongly advised city councilors not to sign a collective bargaining agreement, giving trade unions the ability to refer workers and negotiate terms and conditions for the Maloney High School project and the Platt one. The Platt one did not have a PLA. They said the project labor agreement, or a PLA, as it's known, would likely make it less competitive and drive up costs because non-union companies would be discouraged to forbidding. So when people ask me, why do you pick on unions with PLAs? It's not that I'm picking on unions. I'm not. The problem with PLAs is, just as I just stated here, you lose competition. And with anything in the free market, the more competition you have, the less you pay for things, and the more quality you get for things. So it was imperative that we shouldn't have a PLA so we could keep competition good. Now, again, there are plenty of companies out there that do just as much great work as union companies do, and that offer a prevailing wage, which would match what labor unions are doing. But to totally cut 3/4 of the bidders out, well, of course, there's only 3 left. And they jacked up the prices. Of course they did. Because they knew they had a 33% chance of getting it. It was a hell of a lot better than their odds before. And when there's less competition, you pay higher prices. That's just the way it is. And that's exactly what happened. But that wasn't the best part. Because remember, Democrats were at odds in this. And listen, this is still a very sore subject to a lot of people in this city. It is a sore subject, as it should be. Because again, we had to spend millions of dollars after Maloney was done to fix the HVAC system, which again, Guy Scaife was ready to hire an in-house HVAC guy just to deal with Maloney High School alone. There were so many problems. That's how crazy it was getting. So, of course, Brian Daniels, the biggest proponent of the PLA, and of course, Mike Rohde, who broke the tie. Mike Rohde was the mayor at the time. He broke the 6-6 tie in favor of the agreement. And Daniels went so far as to criticize Steve Iovanna's decision to oppose the PLA. And this is where Dominello got pissed. If you go and look at statements by Councilor Iovanna on the floor, there's not one legitimate concern that showed he should be voting against it, Daniels said at the time. By Iovanna, an architect by trade, only an architect who really knows all this stuff, said that it's in his experience, his professional experience, that PLAs drive up costs. And Matt Dominello, longtime chairman of the school building committee, agreed with Iovanna and took issues with Daniel's statement that counselors had a responsibility to side with party principles when a vote gets close. That's a problem all within itself, and we'll get into that in a second. Dominello said other concerns, such as the effects on taxpayers, can outweigh party allegiance. Don't say that to people like him. Just because you're in politics for a party doesn't mean you have to vote the same way all the time. What kind of system is that? That's saying and again, listen to this very carefully, because this is what every politician should be saying, no matter what side of the party you're on. I've caught a lot of shit for this because I sit there and I go after Republicans. Screw parties. Listen, your party may have got you into power. You don't work on behalf of the party. You work on behalf of the people. And they are very dangerous people. Politicians that sit there and believe that party is the end-all be-all and you need to stick together on everything is very dangerous. That's a very dangerous politician that should be nowhere near power. And I've stated that here on the show before. This is the statement all politicians should be making, which is why I have so much respect for Matty Dominello. What kind of system is that? That's saying forget the people, forget the taxpayer. As you can see from the Maloney's bid, that's exactly what some politicians did. And Matty Dominello and Stephen Iovanna cared more about the taxpayer. And that's why they voted against it. And they joined the 4 Republicans to vote against it. And at the end of the day, Mayor Rohde voted on behalf of Democrats. He stuck with the party. You don't want politicians like that. You want politicians like Dominello and Iovanna, which is why I have so much respect for them. But that is why when I talk about PLAs, it's not that I'm bashing unions. It's not. It really has nothing to do with unions. It's just the fact that you stifle competition. You stifle competition. That's the issue. And that's why you drive up costs. That is why I'm against PLAs. All right, more question. Let's see. So I didn't like this question. And since we got a couple minutes, I might as well. I got a couple. So someone asked me what my most prized possession was. And I had to ask them back. I was like, are we talking professionally or are we talking personally? And I would say, and I don't consider this to be a profession of mine. I find this show to be a hobby of mine. Like I said, I don't make money off of this show. I Obviously, I spent money on this show. I mean, I've paid for all this equipment here. So, but this is a hobby of mine. So I don't see it as a profession. What's with this the chance on across the street? Listen, we talked about that. We talked about the fact that my neighbor is a hardcore liberal. Of course, works for the city, of course. Hardcore liberal. But again, when I saw the sign the first time and I mentioned it to her, I was like, what are you doing here? And of course, she's, a lovely lady, love her to death. But she's a liberal. And I was like, listen, I'd be offended if you didn't put it there. Because I like people to stick to their roots. I like people to stick to what they believe. If you believe that what she wants to do is perfectly fine, so be it. God bless you. We just have a simple disagreement. But I would never bust her, get really mad at her for having a Jan sign. But I think it's hilarious. Because if you come down the street, you see them both on the sides. But to get back to the question, what is my most prized possession? And I got to tell you, next to my kids, obviously, because my kids aren't possessions. Well, they are possessions because I am responsible for them. But this probably is right here. And which is why I try to display it as much as I possibly can. And I make sure, let me just move my thing here. This is the Meriden Police badge is my most prized possession. And for a couple of reasons. And listen, I've done a lot of stuff with police departments, not only here in Meriden and in New Haven. Because again, I don't think people realize my deep love and respect and admiration that I have for the job they do, that in the military. I have a deep admiration for them because, again, they leave their house every day not knowing whether or not they're coming home. And none of us, I mean, granted, we all do that on a daily basis. You never know what's going to happen. But for these guys specifically, especially in the environment we're in today, listen, I could never show enough appreciation. So when I was given this, I was deeply touched. And I think it's because of a mutual respect we have for one another. And listen, I'll go after the police department. Listen, I have under cassette. If you looked at where we were at, 5 years ago, I was coming down hard on the police department because I believe cassette was, I don't want to say corrupt. I think he was a very poor leader. And I think the management of the police department and the things that he did, whether it was his brother with the records, with the money in the draws, he was overseeing that department at the time, whether, when we went after with his son. Listen, there was all sorts of different things that really just irked me. Do I still have issues with police department now? Yes. I think if I had to do one criticism of the police department, it's the way they do community policing as a whole. I am a deep believer that you need to get more people involved in a central location. And the way we do it now with like 32 different neighborhood associations, I think is a joke. I think it's not working. I don't think it's viable. I think knocking it down to police precincts, the way we did in New Haven, because if you don't remember, I worked very hard in trying to help the New Haven police implement community policing in New Haven. And what we finally decided to do was break it down into policing districts and have community management teams that, again, that community, that district got together. I mean, that's when you had 20, 30, 40 people come into a meeting. Where you look at the 32 that we have now, you have maybe 2 or 3 that are like hardcore. You get some good amount of people. The rest of them, no one really hardly shows up. And again, that's because people like to follow the crowd. And if you have a lot of crowds, and again, you could do that with smaller ones, I think that's better. And again, it's just my constructive criticism to the police department. I've been saying this for years. It's not like you guys are hearing anything new. I believe it should be brass. I want brass at these meetings. And I think we have 6 districts here in the city of Meriden? You should have 6 lieutenants, captains at these meetings to make sure that things are easily addressed. As an officer, don't get again, and I love our officers and what they do for these community policing, but with officers, you have a chain of command you have to go through. If you have a lieutenant or a captain at the meeting and there's something that needs to be addressed immediately, it's just so much easier to get things done. So to me, that's my only constructive criticism that I can say of the police department right now. And again, I'd be more than happy to work with the Meriden Police Department to put something like that together because it's a passion of mine. Public safety is a passion of mine. Again, I think I'm too old to do the job now. but I mean, I would have loved to in my heyday. I almost became an officer, believe it or not. I almost went into the Hartford Police Department. God, had to be almost 20 years ago, and my dad talked me out of it because that's when a Hartford officer got shot in the head or something, and my dad's like, "You're not, no, you're not going to do that." So came close, but again. This Meriden badge, because I think it shows just a mutual respect we have for one another, and I think an admiration of one another. And I don't think my straightforward talking would be welcomed in the streets of Meriden or any city. To be completely honest, I don't know how you guys deal with the things you do. Exactly why I couldn't be a teacher in today's society. And back when we were kids, I could probably be a teacher. When kids had respect for their elders. But listen, Steve Cardillo, he does an awesome North End meeting. But again, that's just one of a few that are really, any successful. But again, we can always change. That's the great thing about it. So we just need to work together. And if we want to really take community policing to the next level, I think that's how we should do it. I definitely think we need to revamp our community policing here in Meriden. And again, I think the more people that go and realize what these great men and women do, not just in Meriden, but in any department around the country. There's my favorite woman in blue to be Kristen Muir. Thank you. Listen, I think the more people that get involved, which is why, again, it's funny because I did both first ones. So I did the first New Haven Citizen Academy, Police Academy, and then I did the first Meriden one, which was fun. And again, you don't realize what these men and women do until you actually see firsthand what they do. That's why I suggest everyone should do a ride along. Everyone should do a ride along. Whether you are fans of police or not, I think doing an overnight with a police department, I think you will quickly get a sense of what it's like to be out there and what these men and women go through on a daily basis, because it really will open your eyes. I know there's plenty of YouTube videos of police activists going and doing trainings and having their eyes opened, but you really never can do it until you do it personally yourself. And I always enjoyed my ride-alongs. And I got to do one again here in Meriden. I haven't done one in a while. It had to be a couple years since I've done a ride-along here in Meriden. I think I'll have to do that with one of the younger officers and see what their feelings are. Because I like to have conversations. I listen, when I do ride-alongs, I think for me, it's more just like soaking up information from these officers. And again, everything we talk about is strictly between us, and I would never. But I like to get what their real feelings are, because I think that's when you get their real feelings and you get the truth from the people that are in the field. I think you can make a lot better decisions. That's why I don't know why. I mean, I would hope that the Public Safety Committee members do ride-alongs frequently. I would hope so, so they could understand what these officers are feeling and seeing out there in the streets. But again, so my prized possession, is right there, hands down. It will always be there. It will sit there forever until I am no longer sitting here in this chair. And then when I finally go into the ground, that will come along with me. So Again, it's just the amount of respect and admiration I have for each and every one of them, which is why when I see tragedies like last week happen, it gets me. It gets me hard, and I take it hard because, again, those gentlemen left their homes and kissed their kids and their wives goodbye, again, and willingly do it, not knowing whether or not they're coming home. And unfortunately for two of them, they didn't. And it's on us as citizens and as those who reap the benefits of their sacrifice, that we honor them, and we always show our respect and admiration towards them and towards the men and women in blue. That's just how I feel, and that's how I'll always feel, and that's how I'll always live my life. But on that note, we'll call it a night. So, guys, as always, I thank you all for being here. Obviously, we have, like I said, 16 days to Election Day. 16 days before we go out there and we make our voices heard. Again, we have a lot of work to do still today. If you want to help out with the campaign, obviously, message me, or you can go on to Volano2022.com and make sure you sign up there. We're going to need Election Day people to make sure that we're working the polls. So, again, if you want to help out, send us a message or an email, and we will get in touch with you. Obviously, we're always doing our door knocking every single day. We're doing lit drops. I think we've done thousands, literally thousands of doors, I think, in the last couple days. And I started this morning at 7, and we didn't finish until, 4:30 or so. So it's a lot of work, but you know what? It's well worth it at the end of the day. Even Mura, I was even up at your house. So I don't know if you're back from Florida or not, but I tagged up your house. Don't worry about it. But until Thursday, guys, I love each and every one of you. I thank you guys for being here. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and each other. And as always, God bless you, and God bless this amazing country we have. We can't take it for granted. And the only way we keep it free is by voting people who are going to keep us free. So until next time, guys, I love each and every one of you. I will see you all on Thursday. Good night.
And the nation and the million faces formed together, made for elevation. And the soldier won't surrender faith. It's like a